Hi guys, in this video I'll be looking at setting up a virtual machine or VM on my UnRaid server and some of the benefits of using a VM. Under the VMs tab on the UnRaid web GUI, select Add VM, and I want my VM to be running Windows 10. I'm going to call my VM Branco and it's going to be my render server. CPU mode can be left as default, and I want this VM to mainly process video, so I'm going to select all 24 logical CPUs so that it will use all available CPU power for rendering videos. My server only has a mere 16GB of memory, so for the VM's initial memory, I'll set it to 4GB and the maximum to 8GB. The machine I will be using is the Q35 5.1 with the OVMF BIOS and Hyper-V enabled. Now to select our OS installation ISO. As you can see, I have a couple of ISO files to choose from. These files are located in the ISO folder on my cache drive. Just like the Windows ISO, we'll need to mount the VirtIO ISO as a CD-ROM drive under the VirtIO drivers ISO. If you don't have the file for the VirtIO drivers, click on the question mark or help under the VM template. In the help text, there should be a URL to download the image file, and you can just put that with the other ISO files and then reference it under the VirtIO drivers ISO option. The primary vDisk will set to a 60GB drive, and everything else can be left as its default option. Now we can create our VM. Once it has been created, we can start it up, using VNC remote to access the VM. And straight away it should start booting from the Windows ISO. So we'll just quickly run through the Windows 10 install. Right, now Windows is installed. I'll just get this all set up to the way I like it. Now, let's go into Device Manager. And here you'll see several devices under the Other Devices tab, which we're going to need to install drivers for. This is where the VirtIO drivers come into play. First up is the Ethernet controller, so right click and click Update Driver. Click Browse My Computer for the drivers, browse and select the CD drive that has the VirtIO ISO mounted, which for me is drive E. You'll get a Windows security prompt asking would you like to install this device software. Click Install and now we should have network connectivity. Repeat this process on all of the uninstalled devices. Once completed, we can change the display from this awful resolution. That's much better. Now that my VM is all set up, let's give it a little benchmark using Cinebench R23 to see how it stacks up against my main rig. My server scores 6,252 on CPU multi-score tasks and 386 on CPU single-core tasks compared to my main rig, which scores 2,553 for CPU multi-core tasks and 529 for CPU single-core tasks. So from this we can see that my server is much faster, more than double the speed at processing multi-core tasks, whilst my main rig is faster on single-core applications. This was to be expected as my server has 12 cores and 24 threads at its disposal, but at a much slower clock speed of 2.4 GHz compared to my first gen i7, which is clocked at 3.2 GHz. The main benefit for myself is the massive storage injection this server build has added to my network, but with some kind of redundancy that I didn't have before. I had been using a 5TB Seagate personal cloud as my main network storage, and having a storage server is a huge step forward. Being able to pass off the workload that requires multi-core processing to my VM for my server to work on is another wonderful benefit, leaving my main rig available for me to play games, browse the web or watch some telly. Another benefit is that the server can be placed anywhere on the network, and as I am in the unfortunate position to have the combination of a Gen 1 Intel i7 CPU, which is basically a glorified space heater, and a small room where my main rig is located, it can get pretty toasty in here at times. Less so now that the work can be passed off to my server, which is located elsewhere in my home. GPU pass-through. Another exciting prospect. I have attempted GPU pass-through on my server using my Zotac GTX 980 out of my main rig as the test subject. After a little messing about, I did manage to get GPU pass-through working, but until GPU prices become a little bit more realistic, I'm going to have to wait to complete this project. Eventually I'd like to be able to reduce the amount of computers in the house using 2 VMs with their own dedicated GPUs and USB controllers using pass-through. At this point I'm more than happy with what I've learned and how useful and surprisingly inexpensive building a home server is, costing me a grand total of £419.80 for this build and sourcing mostly second-hand components. I may even start building my own cheap home storage servers. What do you think? Branco's home storage solutions? Anyway, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for watching, comment below and enjoy your evening.